The sun was slowly going down behind the wide fields of Redstone Valley, painting the sky a warm orange color. The air smelled of dry grass, fresh wind, and a little bit of dust, exactly the kind of evening that cowboys loved. In this valley lived a man named Caleb Turner, a quiet, hard-working cowboy who had spent most of his life caring for horses and helping farmers around the area. Caleb was known for his calm nature and kind heart. People said he could understand animals better than people, and he never argued with anyone. He lived a simple life, but he always wondered if something extraordinary would ever happen to him. Caleb's days usually started with sunrise and ended long after sunset. He didn't mind the long hours. He believed that honest work made life meaningful. Every morning he fed the horses, cleaned the stable, checked fences, and repaired anything that needed fixing. He wasn't rich, but he was respected. Everyone in Redstone Valley trusted him because he never broke a promise. His life was peaceful, steady, and predictable until one evening when everything changed. On that particular night, Caleb was riding back from the northern pasture. He had spent the whole day searching for a missing calf that had wandered off. He finally found it near a dried riverbed and brought it home safely. He was tired but satisfied, and he looked forward to resting. His horse, Copper, walked slowly along the dusty trail, enjoying the cool evening wind. As Caleb reached the small hill that overlooked the main road, he noticed something unusual. Down the road, he saw a large crowd of villagers gathered near a wagon. People were whispering, pointing, and some looked amazed. Others seemed confused. Caleb gently pulled the reins, stopping Copper at the top of the hill, trying to understand what was happening. It wasn't common for people to gather like that in Redstone Valley unless there was trouble or something special to see. Caleb hesitated for a moment, then decided to ride down and check. When he reached the crowd, he noticed that everyone's attention was focused on a tall woman standing near the wagon. She wasn't just tall, she was extremely tall. Taller than anyone Caleb had ever seen. Her height made her look like she came from a different world. She stood quietly, holding a small travel bag, looking slightly nervous but also hopeful. She wore a long, simple dress and a gentle smile, even though the people around her kept staring with wide eyes. Caleb moved closer, trying to figure out who she was. People whispered things like, "Where did she come from? And is she lost? And she must be traveling for many days." But no one dared to approach her directly. Caleb, noticing her uneasy expression, felt a sense of responsibility. He believed that no person should ever feel out of place in Redstone Valley. He climbed off Copper and walked toward her slowly so he wouldn't startle her. She looked down at him far down and gave a soft nod as if thanking him for approaching her instead of staring from afar. "Evenin', ma'am," Caleb said in his calm, warm voice. "I'm Caleb Turner. Looks like you might need some help." The tall woman smiled kindly. "Thank you," she replied in a gentle tone. "My name is Alara." Her voice was soft but carried a certain strength. The villagers listened quietly, curious but polite. Caleb noticed she had kind eyes, the kind that made you feel peaceful when you looked at them. It wasn't her height that caught his attention the most, it was the calmness she carried. The way she stood with dignity, even though many eyes were on her. "Are you traveling alone?" Caleb asked politely. Alara nodded. "Yes. I came from far away. I'm looking for a place called Redwood Chapel. Someone told me I can find it in this valley." The crowd began whispering again. Redwood Chapel was old, almost forgotten. It stood at the far edge of the valley, behind tall trees and a small stream. Hardly anyone visited it anymore, except a few travelers who liked old places. Caleb paused for a moment and asked, "Why are you looking for the chapel?" Alara took a slow breath. "I came for a wedding," people gasped quietly. A wedding? But she was alone. With no groom, no family, no carriage, no celebration. It was unusual. Caleb gently asked, "Where's everyone else?" Alara looked down at her hands. "I don't have anyone else. I came here because the groom, well, he lives in this valley. At least, that's what I was told." The whispers grew louder. Some people felt sorry for her, others confused, some even surprised. A bride arriving alone was something no one expected. Caleb looked around at the villagers and then back at Alara. His heart felt heavy in a way he hadn't felt before. He didn't like seeing someone so hopeful, yet so uncertain. "Did he tell you to come here?" Caleb asked carefully. Alara shook her head. "No. I received a letter from someone claiming to know him. The letter said he wanted me to come here so we could start a life together." Caleb frowned. Something didn't sound right. The valley was full of good people, but every place had a few who liked to play tricks. He felt protective of her, even though he had met her only minutes ago. Before he could say anything else, an older woman from the crowd stepped forward and said, "Child, you should stay with someone until you find the truth. The valley is safe, but you shouldn't walk around alone at night." Alara smiled kindly at the woman. "Thank you. I appreciate your concern." Caleb felt a warm sense of responsibility rising in his chest. He knew the valley well. He knew its people, its roads, its secrets. He also knew that someone new, especially someone different, needed guidance. "If you don't have a place to stay," Caleb said gently, "you can rest at my ranch for the night. It's safe. And I got room. You won't be bothering anyone." Alara looked surprised, then relieved. "Are you sure? I don't want to trouble you." "No trouble," Caleb said with a small smile. "Everyone deserves a peaceful place to rest." The villagers nodded approvingly. Caleb had always been trustworthy, and if anyone could help a traveler, it was him. Alara picked up her small bag. Then, "Thank you, Caleb. I'm grateful." Caleb mounted Copper again and offered his hand to help her walk beside him. She walked slowly, her long steps matching the horse's pace. The crowd watched them leave, whispering stories they would surely repeat for weeks. As they moved away from the village and toward the open land, the sky darkened into shades of deep purple. Fireflies appeared near the bushes, glowing gently. Alara looked around with wonder, as if the valley held secrets she had always wanted to see. Caleb glanced at her occasionally. "You must have traveled far." "Yes," she said softly. "It was a long journey, many days and nights. Must have been tough." Alara smiled. "Every journey is tough, but some are worth it." Her words stayed in Caleb's mind. He didn't know what her past was, or why she believed a letter so deeply, but he could see she carried both hope and sadness. And something inside him wanted to help her find answers. As they approached Caleb's ranch, the lights from the small wooden house glowed warmly, welcoming them. Horses in the stable neighed softly. Sensing Caleb's return, Alara looked at the place with gentle admiration. "It's peaceful here," she said. Caleb nodded. "Not much, but it's home." She smiled. "Sometimes, that's all a person needs." Caleb felt something shift inside him, a feeling he couldn't describe yet. Maybe it was the beginning of a new story, one he had never imagined. And that night, as he showed her a small guest room and made sure she had everything she needed, he sensed that her arrival was going to change his life, in ways he couldn't foresee. The valley had seen many sunsets, many seasons, many travelers, but none like her. And for the first time in a long time, Caleb felt that something extraordinary had finally happened to him. The morning sun spread warm light across Caleb's ranch, gently touching the wooden fences, the fields, and the small house where Alara had spent her first night in Redstone Valley. Birds chirped softly from the tall trees, and a peaceful calm filled the air. Caleb stepped out of his room early, as he always did, ready to begin his day. But today felt different. He couldn't help but think about his unusual guest, Alara, the giant bride who had arrived searching for someone she had never met. He walked quietly toward the guest room door. He didn't want to disturb her, but he was also curious to know how she was doing after such a long journey. Before he could knock, the door opened slowly, and Alara stepped out with a gentle smile. Even in the hallway, she looked tall enough to almost touch the ceiling, but her soft expression made her seem approachable and kind. "Good morning, Caleb," she said in her calm voice. "Mornin', Alara. I hope you slept well," Caleb replied warmly. "I did," she said. "Your home is very peaceful. I feel safe here." Caleb nodded, feeling a small sense of pride. I'm glad. You're welcome to stay as long as you need. Ilara thanked him again and followed him toward the kitchen. The house wasn't very big, but the warm colors and wooden shelves made it feel cozy. Caleb prepared a simple breakfast bread, fresh milk, and honey. He worried she might need more food because of her height, but she seemed grateful for whatever he offered. Caleb, she said softly as she sat down. Thank you again for helping me yesterday. I know you didn't have to. Caleb shook his head. No one should travel alone at night, especially someone new to the valley. It's only right to lend a hand. Ilara smiled, looking relieved. Not everyone thinks that way. Well, Caleb said with a small shrug. Maybe the world needs more people who do. They ate quietly for a moment, enjoying the warm morning sunlight. But Caleb knew they needed to talk about the real reason she came. He sat across from her and asked gently, So, about that letter you got, you said someone invited you here for a wedding? Ilara nodded. She reached into her bag and took out a folded piece of paper. She placed it on the table carefully. Caleb picked it up, opened it, and read the words written in simple handwriting. Come to Redwood Chapel on the first full moon of spring. He waits for you. He wants to build a future with you. There was no name, no signature, no details, just that message. Caleb folded the letter again and placed it back. Do you know who sent it? No, Ilara admitted softly. But I believed it. It felt sincere. And it gave me hope. Caleb noticed a small sadness behind her voice. Who exactly were you expecting to meet? Ilara looked down at her hands. Someone I was told about years ago. Someone who understood me. Someone who didn't see me as strange or different. Caleb didn't push her further. Instead, he said gently, Well, we'll figure this out. Redwood Chapel isn't far from here. Maybe we can visit it today. Ilara looked up, her eyes shining with a mix of hope and fear. Would you come with me? Of course, Caleb said immediately. You shouldn't go alone. Her smile returned soft, grateful, full of relief. After breakfast, Caleb saddled Copper and prepared for the short journey. Ilara walked beside them, her long strides matching the horse's pace easily. As they moved through the valley, the early sun made the fields glow. Farmers waved at Caleb, curious about the tall woman beside him. Some whispered quietly, but no one was rude. Ilara smiled politely at everyone, though Caleb could tell she felt nervous. You okay? He asked gently. Yes, she said. Your valley is welcoming, but I still worry people see me as different. Caleb glanced at her. Different isn't a bad thing, Ilara. Sometimes it's what makes a person special. She looked at him with quiet appreciation. Thank you. You speak with kindness. Caleb felt a warm feeling rise in his chest, but he stayed focused on the path. They eventually reached the edge of the forest. Beyond the trees stood Redwood Chapel, a small, old building built from dark red wood that had aged beautifully over time. It stood alone, surrounded by large trees that almost hid it from sight. Sunlight passed between the branches, creating soft patterns on the ground. Ilara paused as she looked at the chapel. Her expression changed like she was seeing a memory come to life. This is the place, she whispered. Caleb nodded. Let's look inside. They approached the wooden door. It creaked softly when Caleb pushed it open. Inside, beams of sunlight lit the dust in the air. Wooden benches lined the room, and at the front stood a small table draped with an old cloth. It was quiet, peaceful, untouched. Ilara stepped inside slowly, her footsteps soft. She looked around carefully, as if searching for something familiar. Do you feel like someone was here? Caleb asked. I'm not sure, she said. But this place, it feels connected to the letter. That, 9, lat. They walked through the small chapel, checking corners, benches, and shelves. Caleb found nothing that looked recent, no footprints, no fresh items, nothing that suggested someone had been waiting. Ilara's shoulders dropped. Maybe it was a mistake. Caleb shook his head. Or maybe the person changed their mind. Or maybe this letter was meant to bring you here for another reason. She looked at him, confused. What reason? Caleb thought for a moment. Sometimes life brings people together in unexpected ways. Alara gave a small, sad smile. Maybe. She walked toward the front of the chapel and sat carefully on one of the benches. Her long legs didn't fit perfectly, but she didn't complain. Caleb sat beside her. Do you want to tell me more about why you believed the letter? Caleb asked gently. Alara sighed softly. Because I wanted to believe someone was waiting for me. Where I came from, people were kind but distant. They admired my strength, but did not understand my heart. I always felt like I didn't belong. Then one day, someone told me about a man, someone who lived far away, someone who was said to be gentle and brave, someone who wouldn't fear me or judge me. I thought the letter came from someone connected to him. Caleb nodded slowly. And coming here was a chance for a new beginning. Yes, she said quietly. Caleb wanted to comfort her, but he didn't want to say anything that would feel empty or forced. Instead, he said, well, we're not done yet. There are people in the valley who know a lot about old letters and stories. Maybe we can ask around. Alara's eyes brightened again. You would help me do that? Of course, Caleb said sincerely. You came all this way. You deserve answers. She looked around the chapel again. This place, even if no one is here, it feels calm. I'm glad I saw it. Caleb smiled. Then, it wasn't a wasted trip. They left the chapel and headed back toward the valley. As they walked, Caleb noticed Alara's steps becoming lighter. As if she felt a little more hopeful, birds flew overhead, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves above them. Halfway back, they came across an old man named Henry Walker, who lived near the forest. He was friendly and always curious. Well, Henry said with a smile. Caleb Turner? And a new friend? Caleb introduced Alara politely. Henry shook her hand without hesitation, surprising her. What brings you two out here? Henry asked. We visited Redwood Chapel, Caleb said. We're looking for information about a letter. Henry raised his eyebrows. A letter? About a wedding, perhaps? Alara gasped softly. Caleb leaned forward. You know something? Henry scratched his beard. I know that years ago, there was talk in the valley about a traveler, a man who left, saying he would return with someone special. He never came back, though. People stopped talking about him. Alara's eyes widened. Do you know his name? Henry frowned thoughtfully. I can't recall. But old Miss Lydia at the library may know. She remembers every story and every person who ever passed through this valley. Alara looked hopeful again. Caleb thanked Henry and promised to visit the library next. As they continued walking, Alara looked at Caleb with soft eyes. You didn't have to do all this, Caleb. Yes, I did, he said gently. You came here with hope. I don't want you leaving without the truth. Dreincree now. Alara smiled, touched. You are a good man. Caleb felt his face warm slightly but said nothing. When they reached the ranch again, the sun was high, and the day felt brighter than before. Caleb looked at Alara and said, Tomorrow, we'll visit the library. Maybe that's where the answers are. Alara nodded. I feel lighter now. Because I'm not searching alone. Caleb smiled softly. No one should have to search alone. And as the day came to an end, both of them felt that their journey together was only beginning one, filled with questions, new discoveries, and unexpected connections. Something had brought Alara to the valley, and something told Caleb that her arrival wasn't a mistake. Not at all. The next morning came with a soft golden light that slowly filled Caleb's small house. Birds sat on the fence outside, singing gently as if welcoming a new day full of possibilities. Caleb woke up earlier than usual, not because he had work to do, but because he knew Alara was depending on him today. They were going to visit the Valley Library, hoping to discover the truth behind the mysterious letter that had brought her here. Caleb stretched, washed his face, and stepped into the main room. He expected to see Alara still resting. But to his surprise, She was already awake, standing near the window, looking outside at the peaceful fields. Her tall figure almost filled the space. Yet she looked gentle and calm, as if she belonged here more than anywhere else. "You're up early," Caleb said with a smile. Elara turned and smiled warmly. "I'm used to waking early. Where I came from, the morning hours were quiet and peaceful. I liked taking long walks before others woke up." Caleb nodded. "Well, we've got a lot to do today. Miss Lydia at the library might know something about that old story Henry mentioned." Elara stepped closer. "I hope so. But even if we don't find anything, I'm grateful you're helping me." Caleb waved a hand. "Anyone would have done the same." Elara gave a knowing smile. "Not everyone. But you did." Her words warmed him more than he expected. He cleared his throat lightly. "Let's get some breakfast, then head out." After they ate, Caleb saddled Copper and grabbed his hat. Elara walked beside him, her long strides keeping pace. The morning breeze felt cooler than usual, carrying a sense of anticipation. As they headed toward the village, people once again took notice of Elara. Some waved, some whispered, but others simply admired her presence. She stood out, yes, but in a way that made her seem almost magical, like she carried stories from faraway lands. Caleb noticed her glancing around nervously. "You all right?" "I'm fine," she said softly. "It's just, I'm not used to so many eyes on me." Caleb nodded. "They'll get used to you soon. Folks here are curious but friendly." Elara smiled, though her eyes still showed a little uncertainty. Caleb wanted to reassure her more, but before he could, they reached the small stone building that served as the Valley Library. A wooden sign hung above the entrance, carved with elegant letters that had faded slightly with time. Caleb pushed open the door. A small bell rang, and the familiar scent of old books welcomed them. The library wasn't large, but it held shelves full of history, stories, and memories collected over many years. From behind a desk, an elderly woman looked up. Her silver hair was tied neatly, and her glasses rested low on her nose. She recognized Caleb immediately. Well, Caleb Turner," she said kindly. "You don't visit often. What brings you here today?" Caleb greeted her with a warm smile. "Morning, Miss Lydia. I brought a friend who needs some help." Miss Lydia glanced past him and saw Elara. Her eyes widened, not with fear, but with fascination. "My goodness," she said softly. "What a remarkable sight. Welcome, dear." Elara bent her head respectfully. "Thank you, ma'am. It's a pleasure to meet you." Miss Lydia nodded with a smile. "Caleb, what can I help you two with?" Caleb placed the letter on her desk. "We're looking for information." This letter was sent to Elara. "We want to know who might have written it, or if it connects to any old stories you remember." Miss Lydia adjusted her glasses, picked up the letter, and read it carefully. The room grew quiet as she studied each word, her expression thoughtful. She murmured. "This handwriting. It looks familiar. And this message. I believe I've heard something like this before." Elara leaned forward slightly. "Do you know who wrote it?" "Well," Miss Lydia said, standing slowly. "There was once a traveler named Rowan, a gentle soul. He passed through this valley many years ago. He didn't stay long, but I remember he often spoke about meeting someone special, someone he believed was waiting for him far from here." Elara's eyes widened. "Rowan, I know that name. I heard stories about him. He was the man I hoped to meet." Miss Lydia nodded. "He was a kind man, but he left suddenly, saying he needed to travel north to find someone." Caleb frowned slightly. "Did he ever come back?" Miss Lydia sighed softly. "No, at least, not that I know of. Many wondered what happened to him." Elara's face grew thoughtful. "Then, maybe he sent the letter, or someone who knew him sent it." Miss Lydia carefully folded the letter again. "It's possible. But there's something else. Rowan used to speak of a tall woman he dreamed of, meeting someone who would understand him. At the time, People thought he was simply imagining things. Caleb's eyes shifted toward Alara. Sounds like he wasn't imagining. Alara felt her heart beat faster. Do you know where he went after he left the valley? Miss Lydia walked to a shelf filled with old journals and maps. She pulled out a faded notebook. He kept notes here during his stay. Maybe it can help. She handed the notebook to Alara, who held it carefully, almost reverently. The handwriting inside was soft and thoughtful. Caleb stepped closer to read alongside her. One page caught Alara's attention. If fate is kind, I will meet her. She will be unlike anyone I have known. And I will know her the moment I see her. Alara felt tears gather in her eyes, not of sadness, but of something deeper. Something she hadn't felt in years. Caleb gently asked, Alara, are you all right? She nodded, wiping her eyes softly. I hoped someone like him was real. Miss Lydia smiled kindly. He was real. But I fear his journey ended far north in the mountains. Travelers say he fell ill and was taken in by a small community there. He might still be alive, but no one knows for sure. Caleb looked thoughtful. That's a long journey. Difficult terrain. Alara closed the notebook slowly. I came this far. If he's alive, I have to try. Caleb hesitated. He admired her courage, but he also knew how dangerous mountain travel could be. Still, he saw the determination in her eyes, a quiet strength that reminded him of someone who had faced loneliness for too long. He looked at Miss Lydia. Is there anyone who might know more? Yes, Miss Lydia said. Old Jacob, the mountain guide. He's retired now, but he knows the northern paths better than anyone. If Rowan was taken north, Jacob may have heard about it. Caleb nodded. Thank you, Miss Lydia. You've helped us more than you know. Alara thanked her sincerely, then followed Caleb outside. The sun was brighter now, the air warmer, but the weight of what they'd learned hung softly between them. They walked back toward the ranch, neither speaking at first. Alara held the notebook close, as if it were a piece of her heart. Finally, Caleb asked gently, Are you sure you want to search for him? The mountains are far, and the journey won't be easy. Alara looked at him with quiet certainty. Caleb, all my life I felt like I didn't belong. Then I heard stories of someone who might understand me. I believed those stories because they gave me hope. If Rowan is alive, even weak or lost, I want to find him. Caleb nodded slowly. I understand. She looked down at him. But I don't want to force you into anything. You have your life here. Your home. Your horses. Your peace. Caleb smiled faintly. Alara, life doesn't always stay the same. Sometimes, new things push their way in. Even when we don't expect them. She studied his face for a moment. Are you saying... Caleb took a deep breath. If you want me to? Alara's expression softened, her eyes suddenly warm. I would be grateful. They continued walking, both feeling a shift inside their hearts, something new, something gentle, something forming quietly between them. By the time they reached the ranch, the sky had turned a soft blue. Caleb looked at the mountains far in the distance. They stood tall and strong, waiting silently. Alara, he said softly, tomorrow we'll go meet Jacob the mountain guide. And after that? She asked, her voice hopeful. Caleb looked at her with a reassuring smile. We'll see where the path leads. For the first time since she arrived, Alara felt she wasn't searching alone anymore. And Caleb, he felt that his life, once quiet and predictable, had opened into something far bigger than he imagined. The journey ahead would not be easy, but they were ready to face it. Together, the night before the wedding was calm and quiet. Yet there was a soft excitement moving through the air. Everyone in town talked about how different this wedding was going to be. Some people were surprised, some were curious, and some were simply happy that two people had found love in a world full of loneliness. But for Henry and Maria, the world outside didn't matter anymore. They only cared about the promise they had made to each other to stay together, to support each other, and to build a future that felt like home. That last evening, Henry sat on his porch with a warm blanket around his shoulders. He looked up at the sky filled with stars. The ranch stretched out in front of him, quiet and peaceful. Cows were sleeping in the barn, horses were resting in their stalls, and the wind carried the soft smell of hay and earth. This land had always been his life. He had grown up on it, worked on it, and dreamed on it. But now, he realized something he had never known before. A place, no matter how beautiful, still felt empty without the right person by your side. And for him, that person was Maria. Maria stood inside the house, looking at the simple white dress hanging on the door. She touched the cloth gently, feeling a mix of fear and joy. She had never imagined herself as a bride before. Her life had been filled with responsibilities, challenges, and quiet moments of strength. She had always believed she didn't need anyone. Not because she felt superior, but because she feared trust. Trust was hard for her. Yet, somehow, Henry had opened a door she never knew she had kept closed. As she gazed at the dress, she remembered the day they met, how Henry had looked shocked but respectful, how he had smiled even when she towered over him, and how he had spoken to her with honesty instead of fear. That memory warmed her heart. She whispered softly to herself, "Tomorrow, everything changes." Morning came with a gentle golden light. Birds began singing early, as if they too were preparing for something special. The small church near the ranch was decorated with fresh flowers, white, yellow, and soft pink. The benches were clean, the candles were ready, and the atmosphere felt peaceful. Henry dressed in a simple suit. It wasn't fancy, but it was meaningful. It had belonged to his father, and wearing it made him feel proud, responsible, and connected to his roots. When he looked at himself in the mirror, he saw a man who had been through storms, hardship, and loneliness, yet had come out stronger. He smiled a little. He was ready. Maria needed help with her dress, and one of the kind women from town assisted her. The dress fit her beautifully. Even though she was taller and stronger than most people, she looked gentle and elegant in that moment. Her hair was tied with small white flowers, and her smile carried a softness she rarely showed. The woman helping her said, "You look beautiful," and Maria felt her cheeks warm. Compliments were still new to her. When she stepped outside, the sunlight touched her face, and for a moment she felt like the world paused. She could hear the wind moving across the fields. She could hear her own heartbeat. She could feel the weight of the moment. This was not just a wedding. This was a new beginning. The guests gathered early. Some whispered quietly, some watched with curiosity. But no one carried hate. People had come to realize something important. Love was not about appearances, size, or expectations. Love was about connection, and Henry and Maria had a connection stronger than anything people had ever seen. Henry waited at the front of the small church, his hands shaking a little. He wasn't nervous about the marriage. He was nervous because he wanted everything to go perfectly for Maria. When the door opened and she stepped inside, he actually forgot how to breathe for a few seconds. She looked radiant. Not because of the dress, not because of the flowers, but because of the peace in her eyes. She walked slowly, carefully, making sure every step was gentle. When she reached him, he whispered quietly, "You look amazing." She smiled and whispered back, "And you look handsome." The ceremony began. The pastor spoke about love, trust, honesty, and support. He spoke about how two different worlds could become one. He spoke about courage, the courage to accept someone fully, and the courage to let yourself be loved. Maria listened closely, her hands lightly holding Henry's. His hands were strong but warm, and that warmth calmed her heart. When it was time to say their vows, Henry took a deep breath and looked into her eyes. "Maria," he said softly, "you came into my life when I least expected it. You taught me that strength can be gentle, and gentleness can be strong. You showed me kindness, patience, and honesty. I promise to stand by you, to support you, and to love you every day of my life. You are my home." Maria felt tears forming in her eyes. She wasn't used to emotional words, but she had prepared her vows carefully. When it was her turn, she spoke with a voice that carried both power and tenderness. "Henry, before you, I lived a life that felt lonely even when I pretended it didn't. You saw me when others didn't. You respected me when others judged me. You showed me a world where I belong. I promised to protect our bond, to stay loyal, and to care for you with all my heart. You are the person I trust." Her words touched everyone in the room. The pastor smiled warmly and announced them as husband and wife. When Henry and Maria shared their first gentle embrace as a married couple, the room filled with quiet joy. After the ceremony, the celebration moved to the ranch. Tables were arranged under the open sky, decorated with simple flowers and warm lanterns. The food was homemade, the music was soft, and everyone enjoyed the peaceful atmosphere. The sun began to set, painting the sky in beautiful shades of orange and pink. Henry and Maria sat together, watching the sky change colors. They didn't need to talk much. Their silence felt comfortable, full of meaning. Children from town ran around happily, families laughed together, and even the animals in the fields seemed calm, as if nature itself was celebrating. Later in the evening, Maria stood up and walked toward the horses. She gently stroked one of them, who recognized her, and leaned into her touch. Henry walked up behind her. "You're wonderful with them," he said lightly. "They understand kindness," she replied softly, "just like you do." He smiled, feeling her words settle warmly in his heart. As the night grew darker, the lanterns glowed brighter. People began to leave one by one, giving the couple blessings and sweet wishes. Some said it was the most beautiful wedding they had ever seen. Some said the story of Henry and Maria gave them hope, and some simply smiled, feeling that the world had become a little more peaceful. When everyone was gone, Henry and Maria walked slowly back to the house. The air was cool, and the stars shone like tiny candles in the sky. Maria stopped for a moment and looked around the ranch, the fields, the barn, the house, the horizon. "This feels like home," she said gently. Henry nodded. "It's our home now. Everything here. We build together." Maria took his hand, and they walked inside. The door closed softly behind them, leaving the ranch quiet and calm again. That night, they didn't need grand words or big moments. They simply shared the comfort of knowing they were finally where they belonged. For the first time in a long time, neither of them felt alone. Their story became something people would talk about for years, not because it was strange, not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. A story of two hearts that found each other against all expectations. A story of courage, acceptance, and the gentle strength of love. And every day after their wedding, Henry and Maria continued building a life filled with trust, laughter, and quiet adventure. They worked on the ranch together, faced challenges together, and supported each other through every season. Their bond grew deeper, and their home grew warmer. Because love, when true, doesn't need perfection. It only needs honesty, respect, and two people willing to walk side by side, exactly the way Henry and Maria did for the rest of their lives.